It's just, I need her home, one way or the other. I want her home.
Alex Carter, only 10 years old when she and her mom disappeared in Beckley.
They had found a bullet in the wall and blood that had dripped down into the base of the wall.
My blood was found behind the baseboard, so it wasn't cleaned up.
The blood on that bullet belonged to 10-year-old Alex Carter.
I can't remember, but I left that little girl with all my heart.
They wrapped their bodies in bed linens. How they spent 2 days on the basement floor of his home while he dug a shallow grave in his backyard.
Approximately 24 years ago, on August 8, 2000, a 10-year-old girl by the name of Natasha Alex Carter and her 41-year-old mother, Susan Carter, vanished from the face of the earth. Search as everyone may, there was no trace of where they were or what happened to them. At the time of their disappearance, they were living with Susan's new husband, Larry Webb, at his residence in Beckley, West Virginia. They moved into his home during an ongoing custody dispute between Susan and Alex's father, Rick Lafferty. It was as if Rick woke up from a dream and his daughter Alex had never existed. She would have always called him, so he knew something was gravely wrong.
She never called me, she never called her daddy. It was just like she disappeared off the face of the earth. And every time that we get a lead of anything, it was like it just hit a stone wall.
No matter where he looked or how many missing posters he spread throughout the region, no information or trail led to her discovery.
And I knew that Alex would have called me. She wouldn't have gone 2 weeks without calling me. I made up some flyers, posters, missing child posters. I was putting them everywhere.
In an interview, Rick told reporters his daughter mainly stayed with him, and they had a great father-daughter bond.
Ricky Lafferty remembers his daughter as a little 10-year-old girl who loved animals, climbing, and going to church.
She liked to be carried, so I carried her. My mom said, "You gonna carry her when her feet hit the ground, you know?" I said, "Well, yeah, if she wants me to, I will."
While Lafferty claims Alex spent most of her time growing up by his side.
In a sudden twist, that all changed. Rick recalls everything was fine until Alex went on a trip to Disney with her mother and new husband Webb. When they returned, Susan began talking about wanting custody over Alex.
That all changed after Susan Carter's new boyfriend took Alex and Susan on a trip to Disney. When the three returned, he said Susan wanted custody of Alex. It was a disagreement that set off a fierce custody dispute that went on for months. He says that Alex was initially given to him. Then she was sent to live with Susan and her boyfriend in Beckley.
The one who was caught in the middle of this dispute was poor little Alex, who was trying to be strong, but was affected as a child seeing her family torn apart.
Her grandmother, Shirley Day, remembers Alex standing against a wall in her house at that time. As she recalls, it was as if Alex were trying to make herself invisible.
I told her, I said, honey, I wish things was different for you. And she said, well, my mom, she said, it's all right.
But it wasn't all right. 23 years later, court records from those proceedings are still under seal. Documents that could provide clues as to what may have happened to Alex.
It was already hard for Rick with the custody battle, but now his daughter was missing. The years passed, and for detectives, the trail went cold. But Rick never stopped looking, never stopped believing he would find out the truth about his daughter. Decades went by, and Rick had a theory of the person responsible, but the problem was no one in authority would listen to him. However, all it takes is one person in the right place to change all of that, and Rick kept on until he found that one person who listened, FBI Special Agent Jennifer King.
I just couldn't get anyone except Agent King to listen to me.
When the United States Marshal Service brought the missing case to the FBI's attention, It was Agent King who decided that she would not rest until Alex was found. Together with the help of other law enforcement personnel she brought on the case, a new spark was lit in finding where Alex had disappeared. In the initial stages of Alex going missing, speculations pointed fingers at the mother being the one who kidnapped Alex and fled the state. In an FBI press release in December 2021, after the revamped case, they detailed that Susan may have traveled out of state and left West Virginia. But what intensified the theory of her kidnapping Alex were the words the FBI said next. According to the document, they revealed that Susan told Rick he would never see his daughter again amid their custody dispute. Further, they informed the public that Susan may be using the alias Susan Gale Carter Webb, and she may alter her appearance. Turns out, Alex's grandmother also believed the child was afraid of her mother and did not want to live with her, as she recalled Alex's words in court during the custody battle.
And to think about her being so afraid, so afraid. She was a good little girl, and she was a good witness in court too. And she told them, she stood on the witness stand and she told them exactly how things was.
Contrary to the missing date listed on the poster, Rick told authorities something that probably only acted to increase their suspicion of Susan. According to him, Alex didn't go missing on August 8th, but months earlier. He told WVVA reporters, right after Susan told him he'd never see his daughter again, they vanished. In fact, Rick claims that after Susan didn't show up to their next court hearing, he was granted full custody, but by then, it was too late.
While Alex's FBI poster says she was last seen on August 8th, 2000, Lafferty says she went missing months earlier, soon after his ex-wife told him during a mediation in Oak Hill that he would never see his daughter again. When Susan failed to show up at the next hearing, Lafferty says he was granted full custody, but by then he thinks it's possible that she was already gone.
Along with the press release, the FBI announced a $10,000 reward for information that led to a resolution in the case. With 20 years passed since their disappearance, age-progressed photos done by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were used to create updated images of what Alex and Susan may look like. It would later be revealed that law enforcement officials believed Susan allegedly abducted Alex, and a felony warrant for kidnapping was issued for Susan back on November 13th, 2000. At an FBI press conference, Alex's father was brought to tears as he pleaded to have his daughter back home.
Me or any of these gentlemen here, ladies and gentlemen, it's just, I need her home, one way or the other. I want her home.
It was the words of a heartbroken father desperate to be reunited with his little girl, whether alive or no longer of this world. Rick suspected Susan's new husband, Larry Webb, as the one responsible for his daughter's disappearance. The FBI also came to believe the same, and throughout 2022 and 2023, police executed 2 search warrants at Webb's home at 126 Kyle Lane in Mabscott, where incriminating evidence was found in the August 2023 search. Officers stripped away tiles and wall partitions in the bedroom where 10-year-old Alex would have slept. It was there they came across a bullet stuck within a piece of board behind the wall partition with blood still present. The bullet was sent to forensics for testing, and the DNA came back as a match for Alex Carter.
The county prosecutor says a key piece of evidence was found in the remodeled wall of the bedroom behind me. That evidence, bullet evidence, and blood whose DNA matched that of victim Alex Carter.
Asha Carter's DNA by blood was found behind the baseboard, and wasn't cleaned up. So that's the key piece of evidence to me. All the other circumstantial evidence adds to that.
A caregiver named Terry Lilly, who took care of Webb, was interviewed and recounted the searches that led to the shocking discovery.
They had taken a section of wall out in the time before and came back months later and said that after DNA testing, they had found a bullet in the wall and blood that had dripped down into the base of the wall. DNA testing shows they related have belonged to the girl.
Sadly, just days after that interview, Terry passed away. Along with the DNA findings, investigators also collected witness statements that added to the growing evidence on Larry Webb.
And you talked about the bullet, but what other evidence did you have leading to that indictment in 2023?
In 2023, we did have the DNA, as well as some witness statements. This is considered ongoing. So some of the very specific natures of it, we wouldn't want to share at this point.
One neighbor told reporters he and his wife had moved to Kyle Lane in 1999 and that he had allegedly noticed a little girl at Webb's house during the summer of 2000. He supposedly noticed the child only one time, and a year later he noticed a missing child poster in the neighborhood. In 2021, he learned investigators were searching for missing persons. He now believes the child he saw at Webb's house was Alex Carter. The neighbor also reported he had seen another woman who appeared to be staying at Webb's house shortly after the time Susan and Alex disappeared. This evidence was the break in the case detectives needed. All eyes were now pointed at Larry Webb for a confession to what he did with Alex and her mother. The now elderly Webb, however, was allegedly a shell of his former self and used that to his advantage. According to Webb and his caregiver before he passed, he was suffering from dementia and his memory wasn't there.
He told me he didn't remember anything and said he had dementia.
I don't know. I swear I don't know. I don't have any idea what happened to her.
Webb claimed to not remember doing anything to the daughter and mother, and instead said he loved them dearly and would never hurt them.
We were married, I think.
Webb's caretaker, Terry Lilly, cautions us Webb's memory is failing now because of dementia. Webb says he remembers being romantically involved with Susan when she and Alex went missing, but he can't remember the day they disappeared.
I can't remember. But I loved that little girl with all my heart. And I love Susan with all my heart.
He told reporters he searched for them all these years, and when they initially went missing, he thinks he was on a trip, but also that he called the police and took a polygraph test.
He thinks he was away on a trip when the mother and daughter disappeared. He believes he can remember calling the police and later taking a polygraph test.
I've looked for them over the years, but I even went to Cleveland to look for them. I don't know. I just know I loved her with all my heart, and I loved that little girl too.
Drawing closer to the truth, the FBI increased the reward for information from $10,000 to $20,000, but maybe it was too little too late.
State police informed us that Susan Carter is no longer suspected of kidnapping Alex, and they are doubling the reward for information, leading to a resolution to this case.
In a later press conference on the case, a reporter asked an important question. She inquired as to if there was ever an initial investigation when Alex and Susan went missing, but Tony Rouser of the FBI responded admitting that mistakes were made up front and they were looking into what happened to miss the signs.
Investigators say Webb was always a suspect, but now they're looking into whether or not the case was mishandled in the early days.
I asked investigators about an initial investigation into the missing persons report back in 2000.
Was there ever an initial investigation into the missing persons?
So let's call that ongoing at this time. But, some mistakes I think were made up front that we are looking into currently.
Alex's father, Rick Carter, expressed his displeasure with how the Wyoming County Sheriff's Department handled the case, stating that if they had listened to him from the start, instead of telling him his daughter wasn't missing, but with her mother, Alex might have been saved.
If the Wyoming County Sheriff's Department had listened to me from the get-go, from the start, from the very beginning, this case would have been solved and perhaps Alex would have been alive today, but they refused to even write the warrant and refused to even investigate, the disappearance, telling me that they weren't missing, that Alex was with her mother. And I said, well, where's her mother? And the sheriff told me, he said, well, I don't know where her mother is. To me, that's the very definition of missing, is if you don't know where someone is.
Nonetheless, 23 years later, the case was now here, and the next step was trying to locate the bodies of Alex and Susan, as it was now determined that Alex was murdered in her room. In October 2023, 2 months after the last search warrant, Larry Webb, who was in his 80s, was indicted on murder charges for the 2000 disappearance of Susan Carter and her 10-year-old daughter, Natasha Alex Carter.
Raleigh County Prosecuting Attorney Ben Hatfield tells us he's confident Webb murdered 10-year-old Alex.
The sole count of the indictment is first-degree murder of Natasha Alex Carter. We feel that we have sufficient evidence to convict Mr. Webb on that, or we would not have indicted him.
Due to his deteriorating health and legal hurdles involved in obtaining medical clearance for his arrest, his incarceration was delayed until April 2024, after he was visited at a nursing home where the smoking gun in the case presented itself.
That we asked the grand jury, we presented the case over the course of that day, and we asked the grand jury to return the indictment. They returned the indictment, and through the health of Larry Webb, the court proceedings were delayed for various reasons. He was moved to a nursing home. We had issues with transport. We had issues with securing his medical clearance to be incarcerated. It was a bit difficult to move through the court process in the early stages.
Lying on his deathbed being confronted with mounting evidence, Webb confessed to the gruesome murder of 10-year-old Alex Carter and her mother, Susan Carter, over a financial dispute that turned fatal.
Special investigator at my office, Jeff Shoemate, retired chief of detectives from the Beckley City Police Department, and I went to the Hilltop Nursing Home facility prior to a court date earlier this month, where investigator Shoemate was able to speak with Larry Webb for a protracted period of time. Larry Webb told investigator Shoemate exactly what had happened back in 2000 that led to the death of Susan and Alex Carter. It was a detailed, undeniable, unconflicted confession. Larry Webb told Special Investigator Shoemate, with me present, that he shot Susan Carter. The reason that he shot Susan Carter was that he had some cash money that was in the home that he went back for, and that cash money was missing. He began to go through his finances, and that he suspected Susan Carter had spent a lot of money. They had an argument about it, and he shot her. He then said to investigator Shoemate that at that moment he knew he had ruined his life forever. He then detailed that he believed he had to shoot Alex Carter to avoid detection for having killed Susan Carter. He had stored them in the basement of the home, where he cried himself to sleep that night, and then over the course of the next 2 nights dug a shallow grave in the woods on his property. He buried both Susan and Alex Carter together in the same grave, and he buried them in their clothes.
It takes a sick mind to aim a firearm at an innocent 10-year-old girl who looked to you as a stepdad and pull the trigger, all to cover up the atrocities of your own criminal deeds. With the confession now received, officers were determined at the very least to find the bodies and bring little Alex back home to her father to get closure. They took Webb to the yard, where he tried to guide them where he buried the bodies, but he was unable to pinpoint an exact location due to his deteriorating health and memory.
It was then that Larry Webb told Special Investigator Shoemate where out back of the property that we could expect to find the remains of Susan and Alex Carter. That was a bit more difficult because the description was limited. The description was clouded by memory and by physical and mental health at that point in time.
Tammy and Grant Newhouse, who own New Horizons Landscaping in Beckley, were called upon by the FBI to assist with excavating their neighbor Larry Webb's backyard. Hearing the tragic story, they willingly offered their time and effort to search the land, beginning on April 9th.
On April 9th, the first day of digging up Larry Webb's backyard, King noticed the landscaping equipment and business logo at the nearby home of Grant and Tammy Newhouse, the owners of New Horizons.
And we need to know if you will be willing to excavate today, right now. And so we talked, I said, sure.
2 days later, on April 11th at around 4:40 p.m., the search turned up the bodies of Alex and Susan Carter.
Whatever it takes, we're going to dig up every inch of this property till we find them.
And that's what they did, starting at the fence and going row by row, section by section, day and night for 2 days. Webb was brought to the scene after his confession, but because of his age and poor health, was unable to tell them exactly where they were buried. And then on Monday, when they all came back to the scene to start digging again, that is when they made their way to the edge of his property. A moment 24 years in the making when they located Alex and Susan's bodies.
And then Jennifer yelled, "We got them. We found them."
6 hours prior at around 10:30 a.m., Webb passed at the Mount Olive Correctional Prison Complex, where he had finally been medically cleared to be moved. Reports state he was on hospice care while awaiting further court proceedings when he had a medical episode in prison and died. Some may call it fate that he died when she was found, but others would say he got away easy after living a full life to dodge justice behind bars. He stole the life of a little girl who didn't even have the chance to live, and ended the life of the woman who opened her heart to him. Rick Carter never stopped believing that one day his little girl would come home, and that belief became reality.
A mixture of feelings. I mean, you know, you're happy they found her, but you're sad of the circumstances of her not being alive. I mean, you know, I don't care who you have to write. I mean, they may think you're bugging them or whatever, but, you know, just never give it up. Never. Because someone's going to listen. Eventually, someone will listen.
I hope he finds some sense of closure, and Alex and her mother can finally be laid to rest. For more true crime documentaries, check out one of the videos on the screen. This has been an episode of Mysteries, where true stories from around the world come to life. What stories come next? Like, share, comment, and subscribe to never miss what intriguing chronicles will be told.